Jo. Tak děkuji. Doufám, že jste si užili přestávku. Moje jméno je Roman Meliška a přebírám panel teď po Aničce, takže děkuji za antré. Zvu naše hosty na pódium, abychom na sebe dobře viděli. A jak jste si možná již stihli všimnout, so as you may have seen, zároveň přepnu do angličtiny, pokud vám to nevadí, tak as you may have seen, now we have 3 of our speakers that had already made their presentations, but we have one extra guest, because Carlos Moreno is right now on his way to the award ceremony in Paris. So Osamu Okamura, I would love to welcome here on the stage the Dean of Faculty of Arts and Architecture in Technical University in Liberec, author of a wonderful book, City for Everyone. We'll touch on that later on, and as well architect, of course. That's the group here. Please, thank you for welcoming. Thanks to all of you. There will be an opportunity to ask questions later on. The same for you that are following us on the live stream. So please send your questions, be active. We'll do our best to get it over to our guests here on the stage. If I may start very easily, I mean, we have seen 4 beautiful presentations, different topics. You're experts in the business, but what was the 1 or 2 things that was either new or really caught your eye in the presentation of your colleagues here? Petra, would you like to start? Oh, what from the others? Yes, from the others.
So I learned from Carlos Moreno's presentation. He several times he mentioned I didn't know exactly the word, but some kind of the story of the city, the new framing of the city. And what I found interesting was that Paris managed to use this life-changing moment during the strikes and afterwards during the lockdowns to transform streets and to use this moment of change for a new storytelling. So this is what I took with me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, never waste a good crisis and take it as opportunity. Yeah. Carolino, what was that caught your interest from the other presentations?
Well, does it work? Yeah. Well, I did like the pictures Petra showed us, the 7-year-old boys, because I believe it really works. And I already asked if I could use that. I will. It was one thing. The other thing about Jim's presentation, it was great. And I think that we will ask first, but we will just take it and put it into our planned strategy for active mobility, and we are done. It's good. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Jim,
yeah. Welcome. We do this so that it should be that easy. It doesn't need to be more complicated. But I mean, for me, I was really pleased. We know Carolina from several conferences, and she's always promised that we should do something here in Prague. That Walk 21 should come to Prague. You know, we should have the international event here in Prague. And to me, it feels as though we're taking a big step on that journey today. And I was really pleased to see the work behind the person because she's really applied things from learnings in other places. And this is not a place that is desperate. You know, we go to a lot of places where no one's interested. You're doing a lot of good work, and it's really encouraging to see. And so I think our job is to shine a light on the good and highlight this in more places, and then spread the equity of what you're doing so that every neighborhood has the opportunity to benefit. And I think we make sure that we don't just create solutions where there are no problems, you know, but we need to make sure that every investment is definitely giving something back in a measurable way. And I think that this is our opportunity to sort of just maybe tweak a little bit about everything that's happening so that we can really celebrate all that you're already achieving and help you to get more budget to do more.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if there is no desperation, it's really hard to convince the city hall to change. So it's about being wise, which angle to tackle first. Yeah. Osamu, please welcome on the stage once again. And what were your impressions?
Yeah, thank you. All these presentations actually complemented each other very well for me, and my role is a little bit different than yours. I'm more here as well to just to learn and listen and let's say think about what we are saying and think critically, and then maybe translate it or interpret it to the wider public, and as I'm at the educational institution, the university, also to educate the younger generation. So for me, I took from you as from the people who are working hands-on on the walkability in our city's topics. From Petra, I very much appreciated these school streets, for example. I didn't know about this project. It's my shame. I didn't know that something like that exists. So you see that the people in academia somehow are sometimes very, maybe this far away from the reality of these hands-on approaches. And that's great inspiration for me. I didn't know when Carolina presented that we are already testing the same thing also in Prague. So I was quite excited learning that as well. It was just super like new knowledge. And in Jim's presentation, I really liked his localization of his presentation to the data that are relevant for Czech Republic and Prague. So it was actually kind of in-depth statistics about where we are, how we are in comparison with other states. And as for Carlos, again, like zooming out to the bigger picture, it's quite surprising to me was that he started with the climate change. So we are speaking about some very small project, let's say the school street, and cool street as well. It was very refreshing. And we are connecting to the very big problem, to the biggest problem we have. And it's, let's say, our survival on this planet. And when he said that basically the biggest share of the problem of the climate change and the, let's say, CO2 pollutions are being generated in cities. So just to put it, let's say, more exact, 75% of energy is being consumed in cities. And it's quite coincidentally, but also 75% of the greenhouse gas pollutions are being emitted by cities. Yeah. The share is, again, the share is about half of the energy is being consumed by buildings, and 1/3 of the energy is being consumed by transportation. Yeah, and about, let's say, 15% is electric energy production. Yeah, in these shares, there is, in all of them, are very little of renewables actually present. Yeah, so in case of the houses, of the built environment, it is about 1/10 of the energy consumed in the buildings. It's cooling and heating major. This energy consumption. Only 1/10 is coming from renewables. Yeah, 1/10. Yeah, in transportation is the worst. It's 1/30. Yeah, it's global data. Yeah, global data. 1/30 of this is coming from renewables. In the case of electric, it's the best. It's 1/4. So, but all these are touching the walkability and walking. Yeah, when we speak about building energy consumption, it's about the sparsity of the city. Yeah, when you have individual buildings that are in the suburbs, in the urban sprawl, where you can just navigate only through car, that are not walkable at all. All these buildings have much higher energy consumption than in the walkable inner city neighborhoods, that are much denser. So this, and the same with the transportation. If we want to do something with the climate change, it is there, of course, because this is not solvable without tackling all these, let's say, segments.
Yeah, thank you. You touched on it, Samuel. I'll take the line. Transportation. why is walkability in the cities that we all do still so underestimated discipline in the planning of a good, wise city for 21st century? What needs to change, really? I mean, some of you touched a few points, but what needs to change that this is not the kid outside the doors when the big guys are speaking of the future of the city? Your experience wants to take the first.
Well,
Jim.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because if we give in and say that it's not fair or we don't have enough, you miss the fact that so many people are doing it already. And I was really keen to make that point about keeping people walking. We've been going for more than 20 years as an organization. And originally, we were very much asked to work out how to remind people to walk, you know, how to get people out of cars. And in fact, Jiri is here. We did some work together through the Partnership of Urban Mobility, even in the last few years, looking at behavior change. How can we remind people how lovely it can be and how much you miss if you don't do it? And it strikes me that we have to be, it's a lot cheaper to sort of focus on keeping people on their feet than it is to wait until they're in a car and then think about how we could get them out again. And I feel that that asset, the invisible asset, is because we don't measure it. And that's why in my presentation I really tried to focus on the fact that you don't have to go and get new data. There is data already that explains that you've got a really good asset. You've got accessibility to public transport. You've got a lot of people walking. Maybe not enough, but the real measure is, do they want to? Do they enjoy it? We worked in Hong Kong the last 3 years, and they've got the highest level of walking in the world, right? 90% walking in public transport. But they asked us to come and help them for 3 years because they said it's the worst part of their day, and they didn't know what to do, how to make it better, because they're miserable doing it. And if they could give it up, they would. But there's no alternative. There's too many people, 35 million people, and there's nothing else they can do. So they said, we're stuck with it, so we might as well make it good. And I think I'm trying to answer the question is it's like, well, if everybody's doing it, we might as well make it good enough. And if the alternative is they're all going to buy a car, and that's going to kill, take the statistic you want, whatever SDG might be helpful to you right now to motivate you. We need to get on with this. We need to sort of celebrate the success that we have. And that's a responsibility of every department, of every individual, and certainly every politician. And the challenge for me is I think politicians say, well, the citizens never asked for it. Well, too bad. You know, you're in position in order to take responsibility. And the practitioners say, well, we only studied it for a couple of hours at school. And so I don't really know exactly what I'm meant to be doing. Well, too bad. You know, there are plenty of books out there now, plenty of lectures, and there's enough people who know this stuff.
Conferences.
Yeah, why not? I don't think there's excuses. And I think citizens, for me, the transition over the years has been to recognize that citizens, they vote with their feet, not always because they want to enjoy that walk. But if there are people out there, that's a good start. But now let's give them the tool to say, this isn't good enough. And give them the empowerment, I think, that Carlos had in his slide that says, actually, I like doing this, but if you don't make this better, I'm going to stop. And I think if we recognize that figure, and they did it in Asia, across 20 Asian cities, and they found that 80% of people will give up walking as soon as they can afford to, unless, and that was my unless. What's your unless here in Prague? And I think that's not, we shouldn't be sitting here thinking we're all in a problem. The question is, work out the unless and get on with it.
Yeah, that's a wonderful. If Carolina, would you like to take on?
Well, I will be talking about my personal experience because what I'm going to say stems out of my personal experience. I think it is walking, or the time you spend walking, is the time for yourself. And during your life, as you mature and as you start to work, as you start having a family, there is less and less time you have got for yourself. And then you cut working as well. And I think that people here think that they simply don't have time for walking. And they don't realize it's time for themselves, it's good. And they think they have to hurry all the time. So it's speed we need. It's nonsense. You have seen the photo, walking to walking men on the bridge, and then because they were going forward, maybe not very, very quickly, but they did, and the course didn't. So speed, I'm afraid, it's a formula.
Yeah, it's a mindset. I mean, Petra's opening picture and the story you opened your presentation with, the happy faces of the kids, that's exactly in the line what Jim and Carolina are speaking about, isn't it? How to frame walkability and walking in the cities? Or is it just about, okay, you could be there 5 minutes earlier if... It's not the point, is it?
I think the reason, from my point of view, is very simple. It's because men are not interested in walking. And I mean, most of people in power are men. And the second reason is industry is not interested in walking. 3 short stories to prove this hypothesis. I was a young mother of 3. I was walking around with my 3 kids, and I was very angry about all this dog shit on the pavements. It was a pedestrian topic. I didn't knew this at that time. All the men in my surrounding, my partner, my brother, my father, my friends, all these cycling activists, they were not interested in my topic when I started to create my campaign. They said, Petra, please.
Do we have to talk about the dog shit again?
Later on, I have to admit, all these men supported me and they worked a lot. First picture. Second, I once had the chance during a conference to talk with a professor from Traffic Engineering Institute, and I asked him, why don't you do more research in walking? There are so many topics. We have to know more about it. You have to teach your students more about walking. It's so essential for our life in cities and for our transportation system. And he said, no. I said, why? He said, first, it's not technical. And second, I think it's not that interesting and it doesn't belong to my profession. But these people create our transportation system. And third is the industry. They are not interested in people walk. People who walk don't buy vehicles. I mean, who should support this? We see a very bad development among the micromobility, so-called micromobility. It's sold as a great solution for the last mile. Micromobility sharing for the last mile from public transportation to your home. That's nonsense. For the last mile, we have our feet, and we take them with us in our flat. A shared vehicle you have to put somewhere else. You cannot create a sharing system for the last mile because the last mile is an individual trip. For sharing, you need shared trips. You understand? So it's completely nonsense, but it's repeated all over the world. Everybody, the most intelligent people tell this story. We, the pedestrians, we suffer from this development. Jim said before in his presentation, we face motorization of active mobility. It's not good for our health, it's not good for safety, road safety, and it's a problem of space. We will suffer from it for, I think, several years. And we see that all these new electro scooters, electric bikes cause problems on pedestrian space. And in Vienna, we have several companies doing stationless sharing in the city. And one very common product of such an e-scooter is called the super pedestrian. The super pedestrian. The super pedestrian is a super problem for pedestrians.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a good point to seeing how someone is trying to take the brand of a pedestrian and make it something else. Nevertheless, we know that there are various, let's say, value chains in our transportations. You described one of those value chains not interested in walkability and making our cities more walkable and the minutes we spend walking every day going up, knowing that there are value chains not interested in that. What can folks interested in increasing walkability do? Does it make sense to fight these value chains, or is there other solution?
I'm not a big fighter. I think we have to love people through this by opening your eyes to the good stuff. But we've just written a research paper about the value of walking. We've never done this sort of research before. We've normally lent on our friends in academia to do the right research themselves. But no one had really thought about the value of walking and why it wasn't being invested in when everybody's doing it. And this work particularly focused on Africa, where we've got 1 billion people walking every day. And 93% of the places where they walk, there's no footpaths, not even a single thing. And funnily enough, not that funny, but it's the least safe place to walk in the world, with 270 people dying every day as pedestrians. Now those figures are numbing, and unfortunately they do numb people because you just sort of get used to it. And we just wondered why, you know how many people are dying here each year in Prague because of air quality. It's a lot more than the road safety, but it's still not enough to act enough. And these figures, we know them, we all know them, we can put them up on slides, but it always surprises me. I wonder what is enough, or when it becomes too much. And I love the idea that we have places like Los Angeles, that people put pictures up of and say, well, we don't want to be that. But every development that we ever have in any city, the picture of on the front cover of the brochure that they sell you, or the house that they try to encourage you to buy, or the office that they want you to move into, I bet you there's always people outside smiling, holding hands, chatting, looking each other in the eye. And we have to decode that. And this value of time is, I think, absolutely critical. Transport decisions have for many years been all about saving time. I think you're really onto something about this. And we've talked from the beginning with Professor Carlos talking about how actually it's quality of time that matters. And actually the more time, the better. A good walk it should take you 2 hours to walk across the city, not 20 minutes. And once we start thinking about walking, it's not just about the movement, but it's actually about the sitting. We worked out some years ago that 50% of a good walk is actually spent staying. So you're not necessarily just measuring how many minutes of movement, but it's actually how many minutes of sitting, engaging on a bench like this, looking at each other, chatting. And there are plenty of architects, as you'll know, who measure the numbers of people who are sitting, exchanging, smiling, There's even measures of how many people are kissing in the street. I mean, that isn't, we've worked in Iran, that wouldn't necessarily happen everywhere. But it does illustrate to you that it's a place where people are interacting, and that value is actually better than time. And I love to say to the World Bank, and we've set up a finance committee at the moment looking at World Bank and the different finance models, because the biggest investment bank in the world is actually the European Investment Bank. And we've just explored how much they're funding for walking and cycling. And it's minimal, but they've just made a commitment to say that they will invest in carbon-free transport futures. Well, in less than 15 days' time, on the 10th of November at COP, they will have a discussion about, they will table the discussion about the end of the combustion engine. And they will agree that it's the end of the combustion engine and we're facing a new era. And with that comes some new measures and some new values. And I tell you, this is now our opportunity to redefine those values. And I think we're in a very good place to work creatively, quickly, before the end of the year to suggest what those would be that will be human-centered and value time differently so that we're not just saving it, but we're enjoying it.
Jim, does that mean that you don't see the future in switching combustion engine into an electric engine in a car?
Sure, and the Netherlands government rang us about that because they said, look, we're good people. Everybody wants to be. Everyone is an environmentalist in the Netherlands. If you look at the data, they're all trying to do the right thing. Culturally, they're good, honest, wonderful, green people. 50% cycle, and they think, it's just what they do. It's just how the streets have been designed, et cetera, et cetera. And we went there in 2019 because they said, actually, we've realized we've never done anything for walking. And now we find that people are going to buy an electric car and they think that they've done their bit for the environment. And they said, we're seeing now our cities become more and more congested with cars, with electric vehicles. We're having subsidies because companies can't afford to give people pay rises, so they're giving them subsidies to electric vehicles. And they feel that the whole thing is going in the wrong direction, and they've never thought about walking, what can we do? And we're helping them now develop a national strategy to rethink about those values. And my hope, big picture, is that I think we could think about a national strategy in every country in Europe. I think we should, for walking. I think we should have a European strategy for walking. The Commission are interested in that. And I think that we could easily have city strategies for walking, not active mobility. This is about walking and walking to public transport. So we don't get lost in the cycling agenda, but we really identify the potential of walking for itself. And anybody who's interested in being part of that as a network, as a movement, that will be our focus for the next 5 years, for sure.
Osamo, if I may jump over to you, because we touched on the importance of education, which is one of your big topics, not only at the Technical University in Liberec, but as well with your book, which are maybe two extremes, one for the kids, one for, let's say, almost graduates at the university. Can you talk us through a little bit what got you to writing a book that's called City for Everyone, Manual of Urbanism, and why is it so valuable? What does it bring to the stage of walkable cities?
Yeah, when we speak about the walking strategies, it's very often being discussed at forums like this with specialist experts. At the best, also with politicians. We had the mayor here of Prague. I'm very happy for that. And also with urban planners. But what I liked about also Petra's presentation was these toolkits for kids to work in classrooms and workshops from bottom up, let's say, to activate the citizens and to, let's say, promote walking as well towards the youth. Yeah, and that's what made me actually to write this book. Yeah, I'm as I said, I'm the architect, urban planner. Nothing to do much about education, but I wrote a book about urban planning for kids, for the youth, And the biggest chapter actually is about transportation, about transit. Yeah, it's here. Yeah, it's in Czech still. Yeah, and the first chapter is about. There's such a picture, beautiful picture done by the artists David Bem and Irka Franta. I cooperated with.
It's a beautiful book.
Yeah, and these schemes about the spatial needs for different. And the first chapter is about walking. Yeah, and the biggest chapter is about walking. And how it starts, and there are the data from Hong Kong, you know, YPO, and the other countries, the comparison and so on. So what I want to say, the city planning is very complex. Yeah, there are 14 biggest problems. Yeah, and but how to narrate this complexity of urban planning today to, let's say, make it understandable. And the walking, it's so essential to a human that I think that it's one of the best existing narratives, how to explain very complex issue of urban planning today and of our cities and livability of our cities. It's touching so many diverse, let's say, aspects of what we have to deal with. That is one of the, let's say, most understandable and easiest way. And without involving, let's say, the general public and finding a way how to communicate it towards them, the ends will not probably meet, because, of course, the media are full of, let's say, shiny cars. No, the James Bond is not promoting walking, right? It's just driving the fastest possible car. Yeah. So, I mean, we need also the interpretation of these strategies, political strategies and planning strategies, and also, let's say, participation. Yeah. And I'm very happy that this book actually is being now presented at the Buchmesse in Frankfurt, actually today and tomorrow. And it's being translated to German as well. Will be published next year, and also to English. Do we have the English translation already? And and it got the Bologna Ragazzi Prize Award for the most innovative illustrated book for children in the world. Yeah, this year. So I hope it will help also our agenda. Yeah, if you want, there are some copies also in the bookstore or at the registration where you can buy it.
Nice.
Pane, můžu se zeptat?
Yes, prosím.
Well, what age is the book meant for?
It's for the high school primarily, but the images are for younger even, but the texts are even for adults. So it's for, let's say, reading together, yeah, let's say in between different age groups, yeah, as a kind of shared experience. Yeah, and also I want to invite you for a workshop tomorrow where we will have within this conference. Yeah.
I think I will need this because my oldest daughter is getting her driving license, and I should buy this and contradict it a bit.
Yeah, you are very much welcome.
Yeah, from education back to the streets. How do you feel? Is it still possible in the year 2021 that we have, not only in Africa, not only in emerging world, but in Prague, streets with no walking space safe? How is it in Czech cities? There are still streets with no space to walk. How is this possible? Is it legally possible? AB, that's a simple question.
When you see the old photos out of 18th century, 19th century, for example, or the beginning of the 12th century, very often there is no dedicated place for walkers because it's all in one level, and there are walking people, there are the other kinds of transport as well. Then people felt probably it would be more safe if they divide walking people from the other modes of transport. And now the result is that there is so much space given to to cars, I must say that, and so little to walking people. it's not, if there are no visible sidewalks in the street, it doesn't necessarily mean that there is no space for walkers. It may be a pedestrian zone, it may be, I don't know the word, the other one is, resident zone, I'm not sure, is it? So, and the street in this regime is not supposed to have sidewalks because people are allowed to move everywhere, and it's the right, and the car must let them. Of course, the people must let the car get through. That's the other side of the thing.
Petra, how about in Vienna? I mean, last year with COVID, I know there's been, Brigitte Hebe, in the vice mayor at that time still, there's been quite a campaign measuring the width of sidewalks in Vienna. And if I remember correctly, there was roughly about 40% of all sidewalks in Vienna narrower than 2 meters. And it was one of the arguments to get things rolling in the lockdowns in Vienna. Is this something that helped, for instance, as an opportunity, lockdown opportunity, to move things forward? Cool streets, pop-up bike lanes, whatever.
I think it's about the third of the pavements that are too narrow, and we have regions in Vienna at the suburbia where we actually have no pavements because the structure is more like a village than a city. COVID helped us to focus on the short trips in the surrounding of the flat, and going for a walk was the leisure activity number one.
Lifesaver.
The share of walking raised from 28 to 37%. It helped to create school streets and to put more pressure on removing cars from schools because parents had no place to wait for the kids in the morning and in the afternoon. They said, we cannot wait on these narrow pavements and keep the distance. It's not possible anymore. So in a certain way, it helped. The other side is we had elections and pop-up cycling lanes and other temporarily opening of streets were very dividing parties, dividing peoples and opinions. So actually, the city is not supporting this kind of instruments, but we learned that people want to have trees in the streets, and people want to have traffic calming around schools. There is a big support from the citizens and from the authorities. So there is some good development. We don't make cool streets and pop-up cycling lanes and so anymore. Politics wants to invest in infrastructure, and instead of temporary measures, they want to build something. Not so bad.
Yeah, thank you. Jim, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I just want to remember or remind us all that the street, the footpath, is the only place where we're all equal. It's the only public space where we're all equal. And if we take that away, we have really taken something from citizens. It's really the shop window for the city. And I'm reminded of when we had Walk 21 in Vienna, we invited the mayor of Oklahoma City. He was, for those of you who don't know the story, he was something like 200 kilos. He was a big man, okay? And he, understandably, had a health episode where he was told by his doctor he had to walk every day or he was going to die. Okay, so once it gets to that personal level, funnily enough, especially when that person happens to be the mayor, it's quite helpful. So what you need to do is elect a 200-kilo mayor if you can, as soon as possible. Your mayor looked far too healthy. And so he said, okay, I'm going to go on a diet. He opened his door, day one, to go for a walk, and he said, oh my God, we forgot to build footpaths. There weren't any. In his whole town, there was nothing. And he decided that he was going to lead the campaign, and he had to take the citizens with him. That he said, I'll lose 100 kilos, but between us as a city, we're all going to lose something like 1 million or 5 million kilos. Why don't we do this together? I'll invest in the infrastructure. You go out there and use it. And he turned that city round, you know, to be a healthy city. He's now sits on this covenant of mayors. He's one of the mayors as an inspirational speaker to go and help other mayors. And I feel as though that responsibility, you know, why wait for the heart attack? But you're absolutely right, and we have to get into this now. We have to reallocate space. We have to, if you really want to look at what Copenhagen did, every year they took away 10% of car parking for 20 years until they had one of the most walkable cities in the world. You have to reallocate space. You have to do what Krakow did. The one thing that they did was stop people parking on the footpaths. They could do it in a year. They actually gave the job the guy working as a professor, studying sustainable mobility. He collected data about pavement parking, and they gave him a job. Petra, who was campaigning to the city about dog poo, horrible job, but they said, actually, I'm going to give you a job. New York City. The person who was campaigning, asking for better walkability, Bloomberg gave him the job. Petra should be working inside the government because she knows it. But we've got Carolina here, and we've got all of you. And the challenge is working out how you can influence in the best way you can to actually deliver a fairer city, a place where there is enough equity for everybody to be able to be on that street. And whether it's a sidewalk, whether it's a crossing, it saves speed. They're the essentials, they're the basics. Let's get that right. And if you haven't got that, I think you've got a lot of that, but there's still more to do. And that is the number one challenge.
You touched on two important things. And one is the elephant in the room. That's the car taking the space in the city and reallocation. That was the topic of the cities that really moved forward during the last year's first wave of pandemics. So the elephant in the room. I have the feeling sometimes in the Czech Republic, you confirm me, that this is still an untouchable elephant in the room. So what needs to change? That we at least start to speak about the elephant in the room.
I think the world is going with this, isn't it? You know, we've just got these COP talks coming up. We're into action now. I wouldn't be left behind. I think if you're not acting, you'll be the ones who aren't. I think we need to go with the momentum that is there. Let's not stop here and think, oh, we're afraid of the car. I think everything is changing massively.
Unfortunately, the mayor is not staying with us here today to hear it, but I hope the message gets over as well.
I think it is changing, but let me give you a practical. Mayor of Toronto in Canada, he said, we've got all these parking lots all over the place. And he said to the citizens, we're going to give you 3 parking lots a year, and you have to get organized, and there'll be $5,000 goes with it. And citizens said, well, what are we going to do with it? They had to get organized. They had to set up a bank. They had to come up with a plan. And funnily enough, over the course of that year, nearly all those car parks were turned into parks, play areas. They were put seats, a table, you know, sometimes just made out of just pallets or something, very simple. And then at the end of the year, the mayor said, well, the year's up. I need the car park back. And the citizens said, no, you can't take our park. That's our community space. He said, oh, okay. They did that for 10 years, and it transformed the city. He got the citizens to demand the space that they wanted by giving them something on a temporary basis. That's a simple thing that you could do here very quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Any other examples from your cities, from your experience?
Yes, so a crucial point is parking management. 20 years or 25 years ago, the city of Vienna decided by a poll not to have a parking management all over the city. So during the next years, one district after another started to make a parking management by itself. So the pressure of parking was moving to the neighbor districts. And so it was a movement over 20 years. Now, some big districts in the suburbia left, and they will have parking management at the beginning of next year. Then, all over Vienna, we have a parking management system. We know by bad experience from the past that at this moment, the city, municipality, authorities have to be very quick to transform the street, to do something with this free space. We made an experience in 2010-11. There was a district introducing parking management, but removing nothing. So what happened? So at the end of the year, the residents cancelled their places in the garages because it costs money, and put their cars into the street because they were residents, they had the right to do it. The commuters put their cars into the garages. So we had a change of parking cars, and although there was a parking management, no place were free for better infrastructure. The city learned from this. Now I think even every district major knows that there's a short time of action to reorganize the parking order, to have, you showed these nice pictures of parking cars hanging over the pavements. So it's a very cheap measure to change the direction. That's the first action. And then with infrastructural projects, planting trees, building cycling paths, and enlarging pavements, you can, take space from the cars. But it's not easy. But I think we cannot not do it.
No, I would just connect to what Petra said, that it's the spatial issue, basically, or space management issue. So when touching upon the electromobility, it's completely dead end, no, because it doesn't solve the spatial issue. It solves just the engine, And as the city is very, let's say, the shared space is very, very valuable and is very little and few. I think we have to think about how to, let's say, make walking easier and more favorable. For example, what I'm promoting a lot are the shopping streets. The shopping streets instead of shopping malls. This is what brings people to the city. And that's because we don't have really. The problem is that we have to prepare let's say strategy how to make streets really attractive and how to compete with the ideas of the industry. Because the industry is very well connected with the politics, And so it's car or tree, or it's a shopping mall or the shopping street. It's not really well balanced, I would say. Yeah, and if there is not really strong, let's say, leadership in the city management, in that sense that we can make our city really more attractive for walking, it will never happen. Yeah, because the push of the industry is so strong, and the electromobility is everywhere now as a big issue, solving everything. But it's not true. It's not true at all. Yeah. Yeah, so it's even the same with the e-shopping. Yeah, people buying over internet and getting delivered goods at home. The cargo transport that is generated through this is going to triple the need for trucks in the cities until 2050, and it's not actually possible to contain in our city. So it's the e-shopping is not any solution at all, another dead end. Yeah. So that we are making so many mistakes all the time. We think that something is a solution, but it's not.
Yeah, before jumping over to you, to Kaya and Jim, if Carlos would be with us here today, then I'm sure at this stage he would say that's exactly the reason of the 15-minute city concept. You don't allow the goods to travel from the other side of the city or of the country to be brought to you at your time, but you really go out within your perimeter. Is it walking? Is it bicycle? That's a detail. Carlos is the first one to say it's not about 15-minute rigidly. It could be 3-minute city, it could be 18-minute city. But the concept, the mindset, the proximity. And yeah, I'm afraid that with electro-car mobility, because, by the way, not sure if all of you know, but there were more bicycles, electric bikes, being bought in Germany alone last year than electric cars were sold in entire Europe. So if we speak about electric mobility, we're basically speaking about e-bikes, because electric cars are so, e-bikes are so, just looking at the volume, usage and so on. But coming back to questions here, Jim, and Kaya, you wanted to follow up. Then technically, we have 10 minutes to go. I'd love to give a chance to our guests here in the room, as the same with our followers in the live stream. So if you don't mind, now it's your turn. Then we give a chance to your questions, and we will come back to questions from the audience.
I could talk about all this for a long time, of course, so I don't want to take all the time. I just wanted to share 3 very quick things. The mayor, in terms of parking, the mayor of Donostia, San Sebastian, he made a decision 20 years ago to put the cars underground. He said, if you can't see it in the morning, you won't use it. You don't choose it. So his policy was simple. If you want a development, the parking has to be underground. And it has really transformed that city to one of the best places, I think, to walk in the world, by just taking away the visibility of parking. Second quick thing was, in Bogota, Colombia, the design standard is a 12-meter footpath. And you have to say why you're not building that.
So you make a default.
That's the default. So they're building 12 meters, so why wouldn't you, if there's that many people on the street? So, you can change the paradigm, by just accepting that. And the last thing was just in Santiago de Chile, I told you we travel a lot when we can. The mayor didn't have enough money, but the bank, Santander Bank, on the street said, our people who come in here to give money or to take money out don't feel safe on the street outside. So the mayor just said, well, what do you want to do with it? And they painted it Santander red, and they put art in there and lights, and they just made it a wonderful place to be. And so they gave the permission to the shop to not just stop at the door, but to think about their customer outside. If we did that for schools, if we did that for here even, and you were really interested in the people who were coming to lectures, to make sure that your professors weren't going to be killed, but actually have an enjoyable time, so that they're going to be nice to their students, and the students are going to be awake and listening, you know, what environment changes would have to happen. And I was really pleased to see that Santander Street, it changes into a Carlsberg Street and goes green a bit further down. And this permission, giving people permission to realize that they have that opportunity to change their street, I think is really powerful. I think we put too much emphasis on imagining that it's down to the authority. You know, I think we can be making those changes.
Thank you. Kayo.
Quickly. Well, I think that the problem is much more grave here in, I don't know if to say in Prague or in the Czech Republic. It's about that parking places made away with. It's not about growing a tree instead of them or putting a table and a chair there. It's about securing a basic level of safety in the streets. I experience many situations like we can't put a new pedestrian traffic here because it would mean to give up 10 parking places to secure the, you know, the vista on the both sides. So we know people go walk there because it's on the, you know, on the route. But the pedestrian traffic, the pedestrian crossing can't be there, and it's about that walking solves itself. It doesn't need any attention. Of course it does, because people walk there anyway, but it's not safe for them.
Yeah, it's courage. By the way, my question before I hand it over to you, how many of you here work for the City Hall in Prague or are somehow connected, really actively been in position to influence it? Is there someone? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Okay, so out of, let's say 50 or 30, so that's not a lot. I really missed, and I can tell you can't tell that, but I can tell it, I really missed that we don't have a vice mayor for transportation here today. We don't have a mayor here today. This is a shame for such an important conference. I mean, how can one waste such an opportunity to learn, to contribute? Okay, that was my point.
We'll come back, don't worry. This is just the beginning.
Yeah. If not them, then the next card, that's for sure. Because the tide is changing, yeah. Questions out for you. There's a mic, so please just raise your hand and the microphone is coming over to you. Any questions? I hardly see against the light, so please help me with your hands raising. Oh, that's not. No question? Oh, yes, please, Petra.
If you had a chance to visit a politician who can switch the focus on transportation, who decides about transportation, what would be your argument how to persuade him or her to focus on walking? One main argument, is it money or is it more social contact? What works with people, usually men, who are in decision positions?
Change them.
Thank you. I don't know, we tried everything, but nothing works.
Look, I've done this a lot, and like I said early on in my presentation, I've never met an elected official who doesn't want to let children be able to walk to school safely, to let people who are elderly, you know, be able to walk the streets without tripping up. You know, it's how to present the agenda. However, you know, ultimately, for an elected official, it's about knowing that if you enjoying this power, that this is the way that you're going to stay in power. And so I normally would take a politician for a walk. And within an hour of a walk, as you know, with walking with anyone, you disarm people from being able to put up a front about how busy they are and how they can't stay and they've got so much to do. And within an hour, you really get to know someone when you're walking together, because you're not looking at each other in the eye all the time. It's not that elevator moment when you've got only 3 minutes or a minute even. It's not about that. So take people on a walk and you will get to know them. They'll get to know you and you'll find a path. And we certainly did that in Vienna. It was the mayor who said, I'm hated by these people in the street, by the shopkeepers, because I'm going to take the cars away. And she said, I need your support because I have to have the police with me when I'm going down this street. And I said, so why not organize a walk with these people? Why don't we come out onto the street, talk about what we're doing after they did the job and actually took away the parking on that shop street, just like everywhere else in the world. The shopkeepers were saying, why the hell did you not do this before? And the shopkeepers in the street on the other side said, why haven't you done us? Why do they have all the benefits? And that's a politician's life. But we have to just do something, do a signature project, make the invisible visible by showing how much people want this, and then get on with it, do something, demonstrate how popular it is, and then repeat.
Make the invisible visible is the message, I believe. That's the power of the prototype. Yes. Petra, would you like?
So it's two arguments. It's the cheapest way to provide infrastructure, and it is for the biggest group of people. So if you invest in walking, you invest in everybody. But it depends on the politician if these arguments will be followed.
Would you like to add, Osama?
No, I would agree with taking them to the walk and show them the best examples and good practice from neighboring cities, but I have also maybe bad joke here, maybe it's Czech humor, get them hit by a car. I was hit by a car when I was 3 years old, when I'm walking home from a park, and I remember it maybe physically and psychologically till now.
Yeah, let's hope that will be the last, that will be the solution of the last mile. Next question here in the audience, please. Peter Bednar.
Thank you. I recently became a dog owner, so just out of curiosity, I just got a dog recently, so out of curiosity, what was your dog shit strategy, if you don't mind telling us?
I could hold a lesson. So I'm not the representative of the maintaining and and cleaning department. There were a bunch of measures. First, there was a fee. Second, there was a controlling system, not the police, but the cleaning people got more authority to control people. And then third, campaigns for several years, and providing bags for the dog droppings at every corner. And during 2-3 years, the problem was solved. And it learned me so I saw that such big problems, and we had this problem for decades. And Major said, when they retired, okay, I have done a lot, but this problem I couldn't solve. And I saw, okay, such a problem can be solved during a very short time in a shift of behavior.
Thank you. We are run out of time for this panel. I have one last question for our audience that is so loyal, following us and via live stream. So thank you for all of you watching us here. There's one question I can only pick up from that. That is technical one to Vienna, to Petra, please. How are you capturing pedestrian and cycling mobility data? So pretty a technical one and an easy one. How do you get the data so you can at least part of the discussion, not all, but part of the discussion can be based on the data? How do you do that?
The model shift is taken every year. It's a survey run by interviews. And then we have also counting pillars for cyclists, not for pedestrians anymore.
Excellent. Jim, please, and Gaia, would you like to follow? Yes, please.
Just to mention, the one who asked, we have got quite a detailed report on this. We had a meeting on that with Vienna people, and I can give it
So there is one for Prague available as well.
Yeah, it is
That's
available.
the message.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Jim, please. That will be the final point.
My last point really was my first point. Like, is it reasonable what we expect people to, the amount of time and effort to actually walk on the streets here in Prague? Is it reasonable? And we can demonize dog owners or motorists, there's cyclists, mini scooters, you know, all these people get in our way, absolutely, or they could potentially be the enemy, but I don't think they are. I think it's about being reasonable with each other, being social in a system where, coming back to Professor Carlos, talks about that common good. This is really basic stuff about human nature, about us all getting on. And we choose to live in cities because we're social animals. And I think we just have to make sure that we're honest, equitable social animals and be kind to each other. So when people start talking about happiness in cities, it's okay, you know, if you're a planner to start planning for happiness. And if you're a transport engineer, then make sure that you're building joy in what you build. And I think let's put reasonableness at the heart of everything that we do and make sure that we've thought about everybody's needs in what we deliver.
That's a wonderful, wonderful final point. Thank you so much. Thank you for the panel. Thank you for the attention here in the auditorium as well on the live stream. And we'll be back with our conference. I don't have the time right now, but it's 1:40, so we'll keep on running. There is a wonderful set of presentations later today, as well as another panels. So please recharge, refuel, and be back. Thank you so much.